Hi, happy Wednesday. It's Woolly Wednesday, another week of whatever we're doing here. Today we are going to finish up a binding. We started last week, and so today we're going to top stitch the binding. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do that. Plus I'm going to show you how to complete your ends. Does that make any sense? After you have stitched your binding on, how to connect the ends. And do that nice and neatly with a mitered seam. So thanks for joining me. Hi Nancy, you're right on time. How are you today? I know you're awesome, right? Okay. Okay, so today is the first day of a special event I'm having. So I thought that since we're not in Houston this year, today would be the first day of Quilt Festival, and we are usually in Houston for that. So it's a crazy time. If you've never been, hopefully we will get to do it again. It's a lot of fun. That's good. It's a lot of fun to go and see all the quilts and all the people and all the shopping, and it's just crazy. But anyway, so I thought we'd have a little special. So we're going to have 5 days of specials because festival is 5 days, and today's the first day. So because it's the 28th of October, I thought, well, we'll do 28% off. So we're going to do 28% off on thread and silk ribbon, and the Wildlife braid, everything that I kind of think goes into that thread category. Argue with me if you want. Maybe you shouldn't put ribbon in the thread category, but for this purpose, we're going to do that. Hi, Mary. You pretend we're in Houston with me. Okay, so the coupon code is, back it up a little bit, Fest Day 1. That is a terrible S. I'm not getting any better at writing backwards. But FEST Day 1. That's our coupon code to get 28% off on, I'm going to show you, on thread. So if you haven't purchased my wool thread and you want to try it, that's a pretty good chance. Hi, Mary. It's a pretty good time to do that. So this is just half of the colors I make. A little taste there. And I hand dye this thread that just starts, I don't have a plain one sitting here. Hold on, I'm going to show you. There, it wasn't that far away because I'm going to dye some after we're done here. So this is the thread I dye. And let's see if we can get a close-up, if it'll focus there. Yeah. So this is a Valdani wool thread, and it is 100% wool, and it's Australian wool. So it's pretty fine, but it's not that fine. I don't know. I think it's perfect for applique. So you can see it here before it's dyed. It's it's kind of fluffy, and it looks really loose. And it looks like you would separate it like with floss. But after I dye it, I'll show you the end here. After it gets dyed, it's tighter because, I'm going to focus on there, because it shrinks. So then it gets tighter, and it's just even nicer to work with. So even if you order the natural that hasn't been dyed, I shrink it. So it's just nicer to stitch with. Okay, this is what I showed you. This is Aqua Allure. It's one of my new colors that I did this year. I'm using this to quilt in the background of my pumpkins that I'm going to show you. So I put 20 yards on each card. I think it's a really good value. I sell that for $6. 20 yards is a good amount. Sometimes you know, you buy thread and it's just not enough. But I thought 20 yards was a good amount. So that's the size 15, okay? And then there's also, I came out with another one. Should have grabbed that one undyed also, but I will show you in comparison. It's fatter, so it's better for, I don't use it for applique, but I like to use it for the embroidery stitching, and I'll show you in some of my leaves the difference. So here you can see the difference in the thickness. This is the regular 15, and this is the size 8. So I don't have that in as many colors. The 15 I have in 30 some colors. But the size 8 right now, because I think it's nice for in leaves and flowers, and so I just haven't done every color because I just didn't think there was a need for that. But so far we have it in all of these colors. So that's the size 8. That one you only get 10 yards on the card. But that's the same price, and that's more of a crewel weight or a top stitching weight. Okay, so that's the wool thread, 28% off. Plus we have the cotton threads, so all of our pearl cotton boxes. So if there's some of these you'd like to get your hands on, this is the Sunset collection, lots of pretty colors. This is the blues. Lots of pretty colors. I have those quite a few different colorways. Oh, this one's yummy. This is the greens. All those nice greens. So this is pearl cotton from House of Embroidery. It has a little sheen. So if you're doing embroidery with that, you get a different texture with that shine than you do with just all the wool. Mary says she loves the thicker thread. Yeah, it's nice. I know you like it. Everybody who tries it likes it. Okay, I also put all of our silk ribbon on the 28% off. So this is the Sunset collection. I sell them in these collections. They coordinate with those boxes. So here is the greens collection of the pearl cotton, and you can get the greens in silk ribbon. So I did some silk ribbon demos maybe this summer, and we did a couple projects with silk ribbon. That cute little bag we made, what do we call that? I don't remember, but that's got silk ribbon on it, and I did some demos showing you how to do embroidery stitches with it. So if you weren't with me then, you can check those out here on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, or just in my online store on the gallery page. Okay, so that's our special today, and we're going to have something different every day for the 5 days of festival. So stay tuned, or just check. You can check the webpage every day, or I'll put an announcement on Facebook also. Okay, so let's do our binding. Hi, Chris. Nice of you to watch today. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm thinking that I've remembered to do everything while we're in this situation. I think so. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera around so you can see on the table. And I'm going to first show you how to connect the ends of binding. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and I'm sure maybe you've seen somewhere a different way. But this is the way I like to do it. So that's what I'm going to show you. This is the way I used to teach it. Okay, so flipping you around. Okay, where is my flipper here? Okay. All right. So here's our pumpkins. Our pumpkin stack we've been working on, and I went with this gold for the binding. And let's see if I can get a close-up in here for you to see. I'm using that aqua. Where did it go? Here. I'm using this aqua allure to quilt the background. So I'm just kind of doing those large 1/4 inch stitches. It's because of the thickness of the wool, it's a lot harder to stitch tiny stitches, so this works great. Okay, so here we are. We've got our binding stitched on all the way around. I put a hanging sleeve on this one also, like I showed you before. This one's tiny. I figured it was big enough. Just got a pin caught on my top. Alright, so here we are with our two ends. And I'm going to connect them right about here. Anybody have any questions before we go? I try to look at this frequently to see if there's any questions. Alright, so this is just how I had more than this left over. I just cut it down to, this is even more than I need to work with. Alright, so the first thing I do is I put a pin here so that you can see this is about the center. It's about where I want my seam to be. And I am going, and you can see I have a little ripple here. But we're going to put that binding on nice and tight. It's not too tight so that it's not flat, but not loose because we don't want that to show. So I think I can probably steam this wool a little bit when it's done and get it back into shape. Sometimes stuff just gets a little stretched as you're working on it, and there's a lot of stitching going on here. And I haven't quilted this background yet, so that's probably part of the problem. Alright, so I am going to bring my binding over to where I want to go and keep it kind of tight, and I need it to stay in place. So I'm just going to use one of these Wonder clips and put it in there, and I'm just clipping down the bottom layer of the binding because I need this to open up. But it won't stay open because all of this is dragging it down. So if I fold this open and fold this corner up, then this will stay there. And you see, if I wouldn't have clamped this down, I've got this big ripple here, and you wouldn't really know where it needs to be. So I'm just going to put something over the top of it. We'll just put that ruler there to kind of hold it in place and keep this where we want it. Alright, so here's my pin. It's about where I want my seam to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to find myself a 45-degree angle. So if I just fold my binding strip down, here's my 45-degree angle. And I just find this easiest. Never done it on camera, but I am just gonna cut. Put my scissors right in between the folds and just cut my 45 degrees. So everything can stay in place. I don't have to move it and use a rotary cutter or mark a line. I can just cut it like that. Okay, so now we've got one ready to go. And we need to get a 45-degree angle on this strip. So again, I'm going to pull this across here kind of tight and put a little clip in here to hold it in place. And then I can fold this back up and get it to lay open. Put something on top of it. Okay. Now I'm going to put this one underneath. You just kind of want to keep making sure they're all laying nice and flat. Now I've got, here's my 45 degrees. Now I need to draw a line. I'm going to clamp this in place. I'm going to move this clip out of the way because it's kind of thick. I need to lay my ruler down. I need something else. All right, I'm going to put my ruler down right this out of the way, right along that line. And I'm going to draw a line. I should have some background music. La da 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 da. Oh. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. You guys don't want to listen to that. I've never really been able to sing. I can sing, it just doesn't sound good. Okay. Oh. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I can see it. Now I just need to get it onto the hard surface so I can draw a better line. Okay, so that line, because it lined up with this one, isn't really good for anything except a place for me to figure out where to put my seam. I need to come in 1/4 inch just for this one to have 1/4 inch seam allowance, and this piece needs 1/4 inch seam allowance. So really, if we add 1/2 inch to this piece, because this line is just where they meet, and they each need seam allowance. So I can't add seam allowance to this one, we already cut it. So we're going to add our seam allowance here. So I'm just eyeballing this. Looks good to me though. And draw my line, and this is my cutting line. So you can cut this with your rotary cutter if you want. Now I can lay them on top of each other. And you see how it's going to all line up, and I'm going to have my nice 45-degree seam. So my seam allowance will go from here to here, and it won't be all bulky in one spot. Now when you go to sew it, to undo all these pins, and when you match them up, you want to make sure that you have a little 1/4 inch dog ear hanging out. And I like to do that on both sides. And that just means that here's my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that's where that little triangle should stick out. There. Now I can go and sew this together, and when I'm done, it'll line up perfect. Have a nice seam, and then I can just finish stitching it down. Okay, what do you guys think of that? Pretty easy, right? I'm going to flip you around again. Hi. Okay, so let's go to the sewing machine, and I can show you while we're on. If you have any questions about that, you know, quick ask them so I can answer. And we will go over to the sewing machine. And what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to stitch in the ditch. Yay! Okay, go on a little walk with me. Right, this just takes me a little second to get this set up over here. Lined up. So stays in place and the camera doesn't end up on the floor. Okay. Are you still with me? I want to show you a couple that I did here. This binding looks just like a normal binding. It's dark though, it's hard to see. What I did was, now the one we just did, my pumpkin stack, I sewed my binding onto the front of the quilt. So when I wrap my binding around to the back, I have two choices. I can either hand stitch this down on the back side, or I can stitch in the ditch right here. Now because I have two colors here, because I have yellow and aqua, I probably won't risk that because it's difficult. It works best when you have the same color and it's easier to hide the stitches. Because if you pop out of that ditch one little stitch, it's going to show. So anyway, this is what I did on here. I should find a spot where I popped out of the... I will find that. But I sewed it to the front, I turned it around, and then I stitched in the ditch from the front. So you can see the stitching line here. And it's difficult because you can't see the back and you're trying to catch those stitches. You can see right here, I missed. And that's what happens. And usually I just go in and hand stitch that down. See if I can find one where I jumped out of the seam a little bit here. I don't know if you can see that. I didn't get it in right in the seam. So I jumped out of that little ditch a little bit, but because that's all dark blue, you can't tell. So that's the time when I will do that because that's pretty fast. But actually, this is faster. That's neater, fast and neater. This is the fastest. What I'm going to show you next. So on this one, this is my Nancy's Garden quilt. On this one, I'm trying to figure out what I did. I sewed the binding to the back and wrapped it around to the front and top stitched, just like I'm going to show you. And even though this binding is lighter and you can see the stitching, I'm okay with that. So it's up to you what method you want to do. If you want it to be in your book perfect, maybe you want to stitch it down by hand. You do it however you're comfortable with how it's going to look. So I'm comfortable with a lot of things. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so here we have our binding. We did this last week. I sewed it to the back of the quilt. Okay, and now we're going to flip it around. So I'd love to use these Wonder Clips. These are great for this because you don't need to pin the whole thing at once. I can just use a few clips and move them as I go. These are the Wonder Clips. If you haven't tried them, I have a few packages in stock if you want to order those. I'm sure you can get them lots of places though. Okay, I'm just going to start over here on the side and I'm going to top stitch. But I'm going to move the camera closer so you can get a closer look. And I'm going to bring the angle down. Okay, that's as close as I can get you. So it's not the best, you can't see my needle, let's see. Now, can you see the needle better? Okay. Because I want you to be able to see when we get to this corner. I'm am not going to back stitch here. I am just going to start stitching. You could take a couple stitches in place if you wanted, but what I will do then is I will pull the thread to the back later and tie a knot. So I just fold this over from the back here and cover up my stitching line. Use a walking foot. If you have dual feed foot, if you have a Bernina dual feed, I don't know about everybody else, but I know Bernina's dual feed foot, you can use that number 10 with the guide, and that can be very helpful. I don't have a guide on my walking foot, and maybe other brands have that. I don't know. But I'm just going to eyeball it and keep myself stitching next to the folded edge. And just fold it in as I go. As long as I just fold it over on top of that stitching line, that is the perfect guide so that I get the same width of a binding. Okay, now I hope you can see what I'm doing. So I am just going to use my fingers to fold that in so that it's straight, because we need to create that miter again. And the bottom here, we're going to fold it up. And I just have this tiny little screwdriver. Whatever tool you got handy, if you have one of those however you say that, AWL, or those little, or some other little pointy device that will help you, so that you can just fold that in nice and get a nice little miter there. Put that little clip on. Now the trick is to, when you get down there, just going to hold that in place. We want to take a turn, so I stop with my needle down, and you want to turn around here, turn this corner. I need something pointier to hold this. There. Turn that corner so that you can just turn the corner right where the miter meets. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to tell you, if you're trying to figure out what kind of sewing machine to buy, gotta love a Bernina. I'm just going to go down and do the next corner for you. Okay, I just went over a seam, and on this one I did not have enough fabric left over when I was doing my binding to do that mitered 45-degree seam allowance. So I could only had enough to do it straight, and I was just too lazy to put another piece on, which is just silly because I regret that now, because there was a big hump there. And it's just certainly not going to be as nice. When I cut these binding strips, they are straight of grain because these are wall hangings, and there's not going to be any stress on the binding edge. So if this isn't something you've been taught, this is good information. On a quilt that's being used, especially a lap quilt, especially a kid's lap quilt, this edge right here on the binding is where all the wear and tear is. And if your binding is just straight of grain, that's just going to wear out fast, and you'll get holes worn there. And a quilt can last a heck of a long time if you have your binding on the bias. So if you cut your binding strips on the bias, then this threads running along this fold are going at an angle, and it's just stronger, and it doesn't wear out as fast. Plus there's more give, so if the kids are fighting over it, it's a little more durable. But when it's a wall hanging, it's just gonna hang there and nobody's monkeying with it, then it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm getting down to this corner again. So I just pull this one down flat, put my little clip on, fold this one up, put a little clip there, and tuck my little corner in so we have a nice 45-degree miter. It's kind of redundant. I think a miter has to be 45 degrees. Maybe not. I don't know. I think though. You're doing woodworking. Okay, I'm rambling again. Sorry. There's nobody else here for me to talk to. It's just me. I got a little off there. I gotta readjust. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna cut this thread so I can show you a close-up how the corner looks. Okay, so there is the front side of my binding, and there is the back of my binding. No hand stitching required, except for my hanging sleeve. I will hand stitch that. So there we go. Forest Flora. Oh, angle you back up here. Okay. All right, so that's our demo for today. Before I go, if you comment, there's not very many of you watching today, but I know there's going to be ladies who watch it later. So if you watch it today, you can still make a comment or share or like any of those things, and get in on the drawing. So the drawing for today is this lovely bundle of autumny colors. It's kind of a random bundle, and anyway, like, share, comment, or if you make a purchase in the online store today, all of those things get you into our weekly drawing. And stay tuned to my page every day for the next 5 days, so we'll have different specials. If you want to get in on the specials each day, and maybe you have to pay for shipping, if your purchase is under $35, there's a shipping charge. If you want to wait, if something you want and you want to wait, I don't know, message me. I'll have to see if I can figure out how to do that so we can kind of bundle things. Or just leave a message, put in your order, and say you want to wait to have it shipped in case there's something else you want to get, and then we can eliminate shipping charges. Okay, so thanks. Hi Dawn. Hi Susan. Thanks for watching today. I hope you guys are having a good day. I make things look so easy. Well, I just have been doing it a long time, but it's not hard. It just takes a little practice. Okay, so thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Have a great Woolly Wednesday. Bye now.